Minglawa, this is Neji from Yedu Seka Wine Podcast. On our channel, we share essential stories inside and outside Myanmar of resilience, strength, passion, expertise, and creativity. We interview individuals and groups that aim to make a difference. We will dive deep and cover stories of youth from Myanmar and hope it will inspire you and why not, make you realize the potential that resides in you. You can find us on Spotify and YouTube. Stay tuned for more and don't forget to subscribe and follow. We are glad you are here. Hello, good evening, Saw Kapi.
Good evening.
Thank you so much for joining the show with us this evening. We are really happy to have you here. So, Saw Kapi is the founding director of the School of Governance and Public Administration. So we have many questions for you tonight. And if you are ready, I will go ahead with the first question.
Please go ahead.
So your school was created directly in the aftermath of the coup. Can you tell us why precisely at that moment? And
Sure.
also, sorry, can you tell us about the vision of SGPA?
Sure. I think let me just go ahead and start with this, the vision. Our vision is to nurture a new generation of public leaders for a new country, Burma. Right? And in order for me to tell you about why we started the School of Governance and Public Administration, it is important that we go back to the history of the country a little bit prior to a military coup in 2021, February the 1st. So we all know Myanmar, or we call it Burma right now, experienced about a decade of relatively politically open era. During that time, everyone, including the ethnic resistance organizations and the semi-civilian government and also the military, tried to fix, we came together and tried to fix the country from the roof, so to say, because we were engaging in a nationwide ceasefire negotiation. We were engaging in 21st century Finland peace talk, and also we were engaging in through Luto, a process of fixing the 2008 constitution. Whether we liked it or not, we knew that it has to be fixed, and therefore we were trying to amend the constitution through the Luto, legislative process. However, even though we invested a lot of our time, a lot of our energy and efforts, and also money into the process, international community also invested invested financially in the process as well. But we know that as a result, we got to the point where military took over the country's power. And we also know that, as a result of military takeover of the power on February the 1st, 2021, it was quite clear that the military is not a reliable partner in solving the country's 7 decades long political conflict. And therefore, we think we need to start doing something differently from what we have done. And the first thing we think about is, okay, we thought about fixing the countries from the roof, such as nationwide ceasefire negotiation, fixing the constitution. It didn't work. So we now would like to start again from the bottom, not from the roof. We want to start fixing the country from the floor. And in order for us to be able to do that, we cannot recognize the current military regime as a governance or as a governance actor or government at all. Therefore, we need to start building or constructing or basically starting our own governance or local level governance at the local level. In doing so, it is very important that we start looking into training or preparing completely new generation of public leaders who will be taking the lead in the administration of public services and the governing of the new country that we are establishing. And that's, in a nutshell, is the very reason why we started at the School of Governance and Public Administration.
Thank you so much. So you are basically training the new leaders of governance at SGPA.
Yes, a new leader of government for a new country, because this revolution or resistance movement is about building a new country. If we are to build a new country, we also need to start preparing ourselves for a new government. And in order for us to have a new government, it is not going to be a government that is only at the center or controlled by the center, but also at the local and state and regions level as well, because we are establishing a federal democratic country.
Interesting. So what we see right now is it's not just for the future, right? The future is happening now. There are already some structures that are transforming themselves. So thinking about that, what would you say are the main challenges when it comes to new governance in Myanmar at the moment?
Well, the biggest challenge is, militarily or security-wise, the biggest challenge is the threat of, either airstrikes or military conflicts with this current military state administrative council, right? This is the SAC. But the second biggest challenge is we simply do not have time or the luxury to sit and learn in a classroom and then, okay, we are preparing ourselves for the future, and therefore we will now be sitting in a classroom and started learning. It doesn't work that way. We learn, we resist, and we prepare ourselves for future governance at the same time. So the biggest challenge is to do all these things at the same time. And therefore, the training of future leaders for governance or in governance is not only those who are going to be leading the country in the future, but also those who are engaging in the revolution or resistance movement currently. So we train both future and also current revolutionary leaders. And that is the biggest challenge.
Mm-hmm. So you have mentioned federal democracy. According to you, what would a good governance in Myanmar look like in the future?
I mean, a good governance in Myanmar in the future must be elected by the people themselves. And a good government or governance system in Myanmar in the future must be the closest possible to the community and the people they will govern.
So what
because only governance structure or government that is the closest to the people will listen to the people and will be accountable to the people they govern.
So participation, obviously. What would be other pillars for new governance to be established and sustained over time?
Well, in Burma, because we want to establish a federal democratic country, there will be several governments, and at least there will be 2 layers of governance, or even government. There will be several governments and 2 layers of governance. One is the center or federal or union government, and the others are governments of different federal units. So there will be several governments, some state level governments, and one, I think, the center or the union level government, which is very important feature in the future federal democratic union that we want to establish. 2, every level of government has to be elected by the people, right? Has to be elected by the people, and they should be directly accountable downward to the people that they serve. So the future government in Burma should not only be the government that govern, but should be the government that serve the people that they claim to govern. Therefore, public administration or administration of public services or provision of public services is extremely important for the future government in Burma. And only government that provide efficient, effective public services will be considered good government in the future. That is what we are striving for. And only government that can provide public services and serve the people will be considered features of good governance in the future.
Thanks. So we also hear a lot the debate around federalism and independence. What is your
Yes.
take on that?
Well, whether we call it federalism or independence, the key here is for the different ethnic nationalities in the country to have their own self-determination. So they need to be able to establish autonomous governments in the region or in the state. That's number one. Number two, regardless of ethnicity, every federal unit should be able to maintain a certain level of their own state's sovereignty, and also, for example, establish a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So that's where I think democracy and federalism marries, right? They married by serving the people and structurally being a government of, for, and by the people.
So our audience is primarily young people from Myanmar. So what would be your advice when it comes to young people participating in shaping new governance and administration in their states and regions?
My only advice for the young people is think more about new country. Think about building a brand new country. Don't get stuck in history. We only have to learn from our history. And even some parts of our history are not accurate or are not right. So we need to also unlearn some of the bad historical chapters. And we need to learn some of the most important lessons from our past. And also we need to relearn new things for our country. And therefore, to learn, to unlearn, and to relearn. It's important, all three stages. That's number one. Number two, when we think about building a new country, it has to be a new country, it has to be a new government, and it is important that we think about new citizen as well. Meaning we have to have a new wine, we have to have a new bottle as well. Both the wines and the bottle have to be new. We cannot just have a new bottle and put old wines in the new bottle, or we cannot just have the new wine and put the new wines in the old bottles. So both the bottles and the wines have to be new. And think about a brand new country, a brand new government, and brand new citizens.
So build a new vineyard, basically.
Exactly. From the very beginning. We have to start it. It's going to be long and it's going to be painful, but that's the only way right now. Because we have tried the old ways and in the old country setting for 75 years already. It's enough.
It is.
It's time to think about completely a brand new country.
So I have a bonus question. If you were part of the ERO and you had just taken over, let's say, a city that was occupied by the Burmese military, what would be your first move to try and establish governance in that place?
Well, first of all, I think continuation of public services in by any means possible, right, necessary is very important. So something that is something that we have to think about, because the people, the ordinary people, the public needs to survive and needs to sustain themselves. So that's what important that we need. We look into that first. But right after that, it is also important that we are prepared to replace or substitute the existing governance with people elected governments or governance structure. And therefore, the first step is to maintain as much as we possibly can public servants or civil servants, or public administrator or civil administrators, and replace new governance or new government with the old one, replace the new government, put in a new government that is elected directly by the people of that particular region. Because only then they will feel that they have a chance or they are part of that government. It cannot be like one people ruled by another people, or one locality ruled by people from other locality, because it is very important that people in that particular locality or a particular area, municipality or locality participate in the government or the governance or governance of their own affairs. So I think that is something that we need to put in place as immediately as we possibly can.
And what about justice and accountability?
Well, I think accountability mechanism should be thought of and should be brought in together with the new governance structure as well. That's number one. But in terms of justice, we need to also think about restorative justice, and also we need to think about transitional justice, and we also need to think about justice in a new country setting as well. So there should be some kind of transitional justice mechanism that we put in place, that we can put in place, and a certain part of population who committed all the crimes and the killings and the murdering of ordinary people in the last several years who are still alive need to be put through that particular justice mechanism, transitional justice mechanism. And therefore, we have to think about justice in about 3 different stages, right?
Thank you so much, Saw Kapi, for this interview. So we have come to the end, but is there anything else you would like to add or share with young people around the country?
All the good questions. Thank you for asking all the good questions. To talk about Myanmar or Burma's politics or Burma transitional politics in about 10 to 15 minutes is extremely difficult, but I hope we made our point, and I think the audience can understand a little bit about the situation in our country a little bit more as well.
So if they wanted to know more about SGPA, School of Governance and Public Administration, they can find it on Facebook, right? And there's also a website.
Yes, we have a web page, not site. We have a web page and also a social media page that they can go on to and read all about the School of Governance and Public Administration.
And you are at the moment recruiting a new students for January.
Yes, we are recruiting new people who are willing to govern the new country. We are not recruiting new students.
New leaders.
New leaders.
To plant new vineyards.
Exactly.
Thank you, Saw Kapi, for these fruitful thoughts and insightful interview. Thank you.
Sure.
And see you soon for your next interview.